Hello, everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you can get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Michelle Manglal-lan, who is a Senior Manager, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, North America region of Samsung Electronics. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Paul.
Oh, pleasure's all ours. Glad to have you on, right? And I'm definitely very excited to hear about your journey at Samsung Electronics. And that title, I know you worked very hard to get that title. So we are
Uh,
going to dive in and know a lot more about how you got there, right? But before we actually find out a little bit more about that title and how you got there, if you could just give us a little bit of an understanding of your cultural background and where you grew up.
yeah, for sure. I actually grew up in Toronto, Ontario, Canada,
Okay,
and
Toronto.
I am Filipino. I spent most of my summers growing up in the Philippines, and I'm a dual citizen. I speak Tagalog fluently, and I actually went to school back home when I was in elementary. So I would say, yes, I'm Canadian, but I'm definitely Filipino at heart.
And talk to me about the Filipino culture.
It's very, it's a really beautiful country to visit, Paul, if you've never been there.
Not
The
not
people are
yet, not yet.
really
That's on the
nice.
bucket list.
The food is great. The weather is fantastic. We're surrounded by islands.
Yes.
And the people are just very helpful and always happy.
Mhm. That's a beautiful thing about the people that have come on the show when they talk about their culture, you know they always emphasize like the family, the community, the food, the energy. It's a
Hmm.
it's a common denominator, right? I know
Yeah.
sometimes when people look at immigrants, they say, "Oh, immigrants this, immigrant that," has a bad stigma at times, but the amount of diversity within in the cultures, but also just that common denominator of like love and community is beautiful. It really, really is. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
reflecting on your childhood, growing up, could you talk about some of the values or lessons that you have learned or from your parents and like kind of like got you to implement into your career?
Yeah, I would say parents actually had a lot of strength, confidence, and they just, had that leap of faith. They left the Philippines, both of them, when they graduated university. They had no family here, no friends here, didn't really have a sense of community. And they just packed their bags with a few of their best friends and fellow graduates and flew to Canada to start a new life. I mean,
Wow.
anyone that can do that, and obviously a lot of immigrants do, it's a huge thing to do. I mean, there are people in my generation and my kids' generation, they get that anxiety of thinking about leaving everything, dropping everything, and starting over. So I do appreciate them to do that because it's not an easy thing.
Mhm.
And for them to do that when they're in their early 20s, I mean, that's huge, right?
And he
So,
just graduated from college.
yeah.
That's
So,
like,
I appreciate them for that. So then I take the chance. If there's jobs that I'm not really 100% good at, I'm just going to take the chance because nothing is going to be, I guess, as huge as what my parents did.
mhm, mhm. That's good. Now, I'm assuming you probably had some stories when you were talking to them. Like that's an honor to be that connected to the source. To be like, you left mid-20s, packed the bag and left. Like when you were talking to your parents, like how was that conversation when they kind of talked about that transition?
I think it's different than when you become an adult, you start having a different type of conversation. And so the
Yes.
journey was obviously a lot different. But, my mother, she just took whatever hospital job that was available and went into a place in Canada that wasn't ideal. Like, so we didn't grow up in Toronto. Like she ended up in Winnipeg first. And
Mm,
there's nothing there. So you're just working, right? And again, no family, no friends, no sense of community. You're
wow.
just alone, right?
Yeah.
So um, it's kind of humbling because I don't know if I could have done it. So, you know, and they stuck it out.
Well, they had each other, to really do that.
Yeah.
So kudos to your parents, to making
Yeah.
that happen. That is a very big thing. It's not even like leaving state to state. We're
No.
talking about flying across. This ain't, you ain't taking the furniture with you. You're not taking your car. Like, this is it. I'm out.
This is it.
Gone.
You and your luggage.
Yes, that is correct. And that's it, your wallet. Yeah.
Yep.
Now, when talking about that, your childhood, let's talk about your educational background, right? What educational experience, things that you're schooling that kind of helped shape you to get into the career that you are right now?
To be honest, when I was little, I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a psychiatrist, which obviously I'm neither of those things. I had to actually start working right after high school because I couldn't afford to go into post-secondary. I grew up in the projects. When my parents came here, they were kind of on their own. They're double income, just kind of striving by. And there was a Filipino community in the projects that kind of stuck together, and that was our family unit. But I've been very, very fortunate to work for global organizations that valued education, that I was able to go back to school while working. So HR wasn't really something that I studied for. I kind of landed into it. When you're younger, you have a lot of grit and a lot of tenacity and drive, and you'll take whatever comes along, right? If there's a job that's available, I'm putting up my hand and say,
Yeah.
give me a shot for it. So I think I stumbled into it. I really was really good at it when I started in recruiting, and then I just kind of expanded my experience in HR as I grew into it. I've been in HR for over 20 years now. And I studied
Congratulations.
after. Thank you. And I studied after, because there's no age limit to go to school.
That is true. We're always learning.
Yep.
Now, when you said the global organizations in school, like, I know a lot of times those organizations contribute to you going back to school. Was that the case with you?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Let's go.
Yeah.
Free education.
That's right. Well, you got to get good grades.
That is correct. Listeners, listen up closely. You got to get good grades. Let's not get it twisted. The reason why I want to talk about give a little bit of insight on that is because there are ways of going to college and getting that type of education that you don't have to pay for it. And I mean, you obviously did it when it came down to school and working. I mean, juggling the two must have been hard.
It was really difficult. I mean, you'd work all day, then you're at home with your family, and then when they go to you, they're in bed, then I'm studying, and homework has to be submitted by 11:59 p.m. the due date. So you're like rushing, and then sometimes I'm doing all-nighters until 6 a.m., take a shower, go to work. But you know what? It's a blip in time, right? So you do what you got to do. It's not forever.
True. That's true.
So you just got to push through it.
And we talking about it's free money. Well, free education, right? We talking about tuitions is crazy out there.
Yes.
You could be dropping 60 grand plus a year. So if someone's willing to drop down on you, I'm staying up.
Yeah, that's right.
And you got it done. So congratulations to you on doing that. And I'm glad we talked about that, because that's something I want our listeners to know they have access to. And they might have to ask their employers about that, that kind of avenue, because it's important to know. I mean, closed mouths don't get fed, but us speaking about it kind of hopefully will enlighten them that there are other options.
Yeah,
Now,
for sure. Just got to ask when you go into the interviews, because it's something that's very common that employers would offer. But again, you have to have a certain threshold in terms of grades to get that financial support.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's beautiful.
It's not free.
That is right. And if they're doing it for so many people, yes.
Right.
Now, how did your career start with, what were like two things you weren't ready for when you first started?
I think because I didn't have the opportunity to go to post-secondary right away. And, when and I had to go to work, so I was really young. I wasn't really ready for restructuring. Obviously, I had no experience when organizations go through restructuring and layoffs. And so that was really difficult, because then I ended up being responsible and had direct reports. And as a person that has just starting your career, that doesn't really have a lot of experience, is really daunting, especially when they're older than you. you don't know what you're doing. You're just trying to figure things out, right?
True.
And so I would say I was definitely not ready for that.
And that could have been a massive, or it was a massive struggle. How'd you like overcome that?
I can't really remember, but I know that it was very challenging just because the people that reported to me had so much more experience, so much more knowledge,
Okay.
and it was very difficult to provide that, the coaching, the feedback when you're in that other boat, when you should be learning from them. So I think I just took the approach of the um, supportive manager. So I'm like kind of like a reverse mentoring type of approach because to be honest, they really knew more than I did.
Hmm. I'm glad you mentioned that word mentor. A lot of the guests on here have expressed, the transition coming from where they were to then get into corporate America working. They were like,
Hmm.
one of the things that helped, incline them up the ladder was mentors, having that
Yeah.
support, you know. So again, I always appreciate it when you guys are all talking the same language. It's like, so our listeners know clearly, guys, they're saying the word mentor through all the episodes. I might need to get one of those, right? Or I might start looking for one of those.
I'll share something. So LinkedIn is really valuable for your professional networking. And when you put on your profile that you are a mentor and you see how many years, type of people you're mentoring, I've gotten asked a lot from people I don't even know and say, I want to get into your career or I'm just starting my career in HR. Would you be open to mentoring me? And I think if you try and approach people that enjoy mentoring, that put it on their profile, that are committed to it, you might actually surprise yourself, even if you ask someone that you don't even know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, gotcha. Well, keep it again. Another word, LinkedIn. LinkedIn, big one. Uh, Walk us through your career journey. Giving us a couple of highlights, some milestones. Some inspirational moments. Give us like maybe one or two that within this HR. You said 20 years. I mean, that's a good
Yeah,
amount of time to really see a lot, goods and bads, right? But
yeah.
let's just talk about the goods for right now.
I think what I loved is the evolution of the way that HR has transformed into. When I started, it was really transactional. You go to CHR, you have benefits, payroll, something wrong with your paycheck. Like it was very, very
Yes.
transactional type of
Yeah. Yeah.
job.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now it's become really strategic. I've been really, really fortunate. I had an opportunity to gain experience in recruiting, in training, performance management, succession planning, promotion, global mobility programs, employee engagement.
So
And
you moved
now
around.
I moved around because you got to keep yourself marketable. You have to kind of open yourself up, and moving up is not the only way to kind of keep yourself current. Also, doing that lateral movement within your same industry can keep you current and relevant and gives you more options.
True. Like you said, it's more, you make yourself more marketable.
Hmm.
Knowing that you were moving from different departments, but you were also successful in each department. You went in there, you learned, you gathered some information, some transferable skills, and then you moved on to the next. And I would assume with all those movements, it got you to land where you are right now, which we're going to talk about in a few, right?
Hmm.
But it just goes to show, like you said, the
Yeah.
lateral movements could also help you gain access to something big. Sometimes people feel they got to go straight through one path, but there's so many different ways. You just got to connect, and having a mentor might be able to open those doors or give you insight to how to move like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Can you explain like what DEI is, and how corporations um, are looking at the need for that?
Yeah, like I said, so growing up, HR didn't really have diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think this is kind of new. It's like the newest trend, not new, but new-ish.
Yes, true.
Um, and I find it really valuable because companies cannot know everything. And, because of the global pandemic, the the employees that you get are just more diverse because they can come from anywhere. A lot of companies have remote employees, they can have employees from different countries, um,
Mhm.
working for the same organization. So you have this now fluid melting pot. And so when you have an opportunity to bring in a diverse workforce, you need to put that effort for inclusion. And I'll just give you an example. When we had Black Lives Matter, that was huge for us. And we had just launched our Galaxy of Black Professionals. It was a great opportunity for us to learn about how they're feeling, what they deal with, which our employees don't really experience that, didn't really think about things like, you know what, I'm just going to drive my car and go over to the store.
Sure.
Or if I get stopped by a cop, I'm not stressing. So learning from each other and understanding what other people may go through, kind of understand, you get an understanding of your privileges as an example, or, the Asian hate crimes, or, certain challenges that the LGBT plus community are going through, or that women go through because there's not enough women in the high tech industry. Everyone has issues. And if you don't have diversity, equity, inclusion, the people to kind of educate you, build that awareness, talk to you about their challenges, their experiences, um, it's very difficult for you to create that inclusive culture in an organization because then you're only basing your decisions on your own experiences.
Sure. Sure. It you are right in saying that it's the newer thing, right?
Mhm.
Now, which we have talked about on the show a lot of times. People just throw that word around, those words around, because they know it's the new thing, but not do the right thing to make it actually be something solid at the company,
Yeah.
right? It does take time, as we know, because you're trying to inform and give the awareness of a lot of things at that time, but there's a right way and a wrong way, right? And some organizations, I know they hire and recruit other people to come in to kind of help them with that because they might be lacking in certain areas. And then other companies just say, well, we're just gonna have a luncheon and that's it.
Mhm.
And it's sad that it's two sides of the spectrum. One organization is looking to really make a change, and the other one is like, I'm just doing it because everyone else is doing it.
Yeah. I think sometimes when they always say sometimes it takes a village to raise a child, you have to
Yep.
do this together, right? So, yes, it's great to bring in a consultant that maybe can kind of give you the framework if DEI is something you're not really familiar with, but including your employees, having those focus groups, having them, read policies or benefits to kind of see what they think, if we're lacking something, if we're offering something that's not really relevant for them, doing all of that internal analytics is really going to what help companies make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, talking about entrepreneurs, right? I want to kind of dive into this. I know the employee retention rate for many entrepreneurs is very low, right?
Mhm.
What can entrepreneurs do to make sure that employees don't leave so often?
That's really hard, Paul, because I think the times have changed, right? If you were talking to my parents, as an example, you're going to start with a job and you're probably going to retire there. You're going to, be there for umpteen years and never look at another organization. Then you have my generation who have kids who are going to tell them, you could do whatever you want, Paul. I got you.
Yeah, yeah,
So you don't have to stay at the organization if you're not happy. So I think it's very difficult. They have to feel appreciated. They have to feel like they're making a difference. And it's a choice now. So times have kind of changed, I think, and it's done that shift. Sometimes, when people buy homes and they say, oh, it's a seller's market, it's a buyer's market, like it just totally did that shift, right?
yeah,
Because a lot
yeah.
more of the younger generation are at home now. There's multiple families in the house. They have a little bit more flexibility to
Mm-hmm.
kind of jump around. Um, That's a tough question to answer, but I think giving them a sense of purpose, and they feel like they're actually contributing is probably one of the ways to keep them.
I agree with you on that. When people feel a sense of belonging, when people
Yeah,
feel like they're a part of something, they're a part of the growth, right?
yeah,
Versus I'm just coming here and I'm making you money, or I'm just helping you out, not really helping
yeah,
myself. Like how it was when you mentioned about the whole school thing. The organization was that's a joint effort right there. I
yes,
get the good grades, I'll still work for you, you help us out. It's like one hand
yeah,
washing the other. So I,
yeah,
I totally agree with you on that. And if more entrepreneurs apply that within their organization, they probably would. But again, to each his own. Some people are
yeah.
going to move like that, but the right ones are going to stay with you, as they would always
Hmm.
say.
Yep.
Talk to us a little about culture. I know you were talking about culture a little bit earlier in regards to your culture, but like, how is it? What is the importance of culture in a company?
It's really important. It's crucial because not everyone, you're dealing with human beings that come from different backgrounds, they have different experiences. And so you need to kind of make sure that the culture that you create, the environment that you create in the organization, they feel like, you know what, I want to go to work. I want to be here. I want to spend the umpteen hours a day. I want to be able to help my colleague. You need to create that environment. Otherwise, a lot of companies are not productive. Um, and then at the end of the day, you don't make money because they're not putting in the effort and the time to get you what you need. And it's so I would say the culture is critical. I mean,
It's like the
I don't
backbone.
know. Yeah, it really is.
Really, it kind of gives like a little template, a blueprint to everybody
Yeah.
on how to move, how to respect each other, how to connect, right?
It's a
How do we show
diversity
up?
of thought, a diversity of thought too. I mean, if I said to you, Paul, I can't figure this out. Every time I try to write upside down, it dies because the ink, I need to have that pen down. And then you say to me, Michelle, why don't you just use a pencil? But in my mind, I never even thought of that because I'm just trying to make that pen work upside down, right? So that diversity of thought, people's experiences,
Mm, mm,
kind of
mm.
help create better teams.
Well
And
said.
yeah,
Well said. And with that, next question, right? I need to know, and I know the listeners are dying to know about your role at Samsung, right? This is a big, massive organization right here. So I know
yeah,
you moved around a lot, but it got you to this place. So speak a little bit more about your current role at Samsung and just
yeah.
what it entails.
I love my role. I think it's a fantastic opportunity. It gives me an opportunity to continue to learn and be around all walks of life. Really. I am responsible for in North America, we have 10 Samsung companies across Canada, US, and Mexico. Couple in production, we have R&D facilities and sales and marketing. So that's pretty much my scope of work. I also manage employee resource groups. So we have about 17 across North America right now. I'm also the liaison for our head office in Korea. So there is a person that does my job in Latin America, in Southwest Asia, Southeast Asia,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Europe. So it gives me an opportunity to kind of see what's happening around the world, what laws are preventing people to kind of, come out and be themselves. Um, the culture, the environment. It's a pretty awesome role, but it's a role that you can't really do by yourself. Like I have to learn from people to kind of understand. So that's why I feel that employee resource groups are really, really crucial to continuing to make sure that I learn and grow and support them where I can.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, earlier you mentioned about the employee resource group.
Yeah.
It's another word that's being discussed in the media. Can you explain like the benefits of
Yeah.
that and why is it important to HR professionals?
It's really important because, like I said, they provide that diversity of thought. So if there's things that we want to implement in HR, I usually go to our employee resource groups to kind of get their thoughts, their opinions of what we want to launch. And a lot of times they'll come back with things that I never even thought of. So I think, having that different perspective is really beneficial for us. Also, when we're recruiting, bringing the employee resource groups, when we're trying to recruit for a specific target, it's great for them to come and have them talk about our culture and what it's like to work for Samsung. So I think it's also really good at that. It also, it helps us with that unconscious bias of, I didn't really think that I was doing that, but, um, building that allyship, I think is really, really great. And again, it takes a village.
Yeah.
So they'll host things
Mhm.
for the Latinx community or for the LGBT plus community, and it's really important that our employees continue to have that awareness, but it's from actually people who know what they're talking about.
It's a beautiful thing to watch too
Yeah.
at a company when you, especially if you've been working there for so long
Yes.
and you see that happening. You're like, wait, hold up, this is actually happening. Wow, it took us this long to figure it out.
No, it's so true because
Yeah.
I've been here for 13 and a half years, and we started offering sessions when I'll just give you an example, our Galaxy of Black Professionals. So we would have um, workshops on systemic racism as an example. We started learning about Juneteenth. They were really the reason why we have early release day on Juneteenth. We never had that before. We didn't even recognize a date. So
Mm,
again, there's things that you don't know what you don't know. So
true. And if no one's telling
if
you, then
you're,
you wouldn't know.
yeah, so the employee resource groups really give you an opportunity to learn, grow, and kind of expand your your world.
Mhm. Now, earlier we talked about a lot of your role and how amazing it is, right? But just as we all know, it also came a hardship, right?
Yeah.
And I want to kind of dive in and touching a little bit on that. I mean, you have an intensive career, right? Could you just kind of talk to us about some of the significant challenges that you faced along the way, right? And how did you overcome them?
I think some of the challenges that you have is that, that I have is that balancing that passion with patience. So I'm not a real patient person, so that was one of the biggest challenges. And if you know that there is a specific change that you would want to see in your organization, you have the power to do it. Power in a sense of like your role and responsibility, not power to make it so, but
Mhm.
then you see that things are just moving so quickly, not moving slowly. And so I think that's a real challenge that people in my role may actually face. You know it's the right thing to do, you know what you got to do, but these things kind of take time, right? You want to have female engineers as an example. So there's not enough women engineers in our high tech industry. But to be honest, there's not enough women studying engineering.
Mhm.
So you're kind of competing
True.
for that small pot, which makes it very challenging too, because there's a war on talent. And ever since the global pandemic, uh, yes, it's expanded, which is fantastic, but their interest of being an engineer is just still not enough. So I
Mhm.
think challenges of getting that diversity number right is a challenge, will always be a challenge. And you
Yeah.
just got to push through it.
And you mentioned something that someone, one of the previous guests had talked about, like we have to find a way to start marketing engineering to women
Hmm.
in a way that they would be like, I want to do this,
Yeah.
right? It might be other careers might be, put to the forefront when speaking to that demographic of individuals, but we have to find ways, or companies have to find ways of finding better ways of marketing it.
Yeah.
And from there, hopefully, we get a lot more people, of different backgrounds, men, women, all different walks of life, just,
Yes.
picking up some of those. And that's how we kind of change it a little bit.
Hmm.
Granted, a lot of it has to come through the culture of the company, but by bringing people in,
The
is
culture changes.
yeah, it starts to shift a little bit. Now,
Yeah.
sometimes they might be a little bit afraid in shifting it because they don't know what the outcome is going to be. Obviously, diversity leads to knowledge, but at the same time, some people might be afraid of what that might come, right? But it's a risk that we all take, but if you're doing it with the right intentions, good things will come to you. And the good people
Absolutely.
also find their way to you. Yeah. Resilience is also a major word, a big word that's always put on the show, like how people have resilience, being first generation or second generation.
Mm-hmm.
Could you speak a little bit more about your resilience and how you have utilized that in your journey?
It's so in 2008, we had financial crisis here in North America. And so I lost my job. I actually left a job that I had for 9 years, took on a new job, and then I was let go after 90 days because of the financial crisis. So, everything, the recession. Um, and my role was not, because it's in HR, it's not money making. So, it's the
One of the
operations,
first ones to go.
let's go. Exactly. So I think, I could have easily kind of invert myself and just be really isolated and like, why did I get fired and all of these things. But I think that the resilience of just the tenacity of getting over tough times and just focus on what you need to do. Like I had a mortgage, I had a family. I'm the other part of the dual income family. And sometimes, you just got to do what you got to do while I'm looking for work in HR. I'm in a grocery store, working as a cashier. I'm doing another job. I'm doing another job while I'm looking for a job. And I think sometimes it's just, you just have to do what you got to do and not worry what other people are thinking,
Yeah.
just so you can continue to push through. It's a blip.
Mm.
I don't even remember that time. I know I did it,
It happened.
but
You probably got some
it's
pictures
not
to prove it.
forever.
Some pictures and some scars to prove it.
Hey, I was a pretty good cashier.
Well, I mean, it's a part of HR, right? It's a quality, it's a skill set that you have. I mean, it's something in you. I feel like you were born with it as well. Like if you have such a love for it, I feel like you've touched your passion. You've connected
Yeah.
to it, and connecting people, connecting the dots, making people feel good and making people feel like supported and represented. You found a way to kind of do it every day now.
Yeah.
So kudos to you for finding it, because people could search their whole life to try to find what they truly love. And listening to this conversation, I could clearly hear it in your voice and see it from your resume and your bio that you definitely love what you do.
I do. I really, really do.
And being who you are a leader. You are a leader. You're a leader for your team. You're a leader for your community. You're a leader in your business, the corporation. We're working with Samsung, but as a leader, leaders have like mantras and different philosophies. And I know one of the ones that you like to rock with is listening, learning, laughing, loving, and living life to its fullest. Right? Right? That right there is a mouthful. Talk to us about that.
I think it's a little bit of everything. I mean, both my parents have passed away. My mother had breast cancer. Thank you very much. My father just passed away. His 1 year anniversary is coming up on June the 5th. And then growing up in the projects, you see kind of things and you're like, wow, I'm still alive. You have to have that. And then my job, right? So living and learning is just, I got to keep open. If I'm going to be really true to diversity, equity, inclusion, I have to continue to listen and learn because I don't know everything. And so I need to educate myself in order to support. But the laugh piece, I do it when I'm happy, obviously, but also when I'm stressed, because it's the way for me to release energy in a positive way. So laughing is really, really key. And loving, I mean, growing up, I always felt like my parents, you got to work, you got to work, you got to move up, you got to work. And so I didn't have that work-life balance. It's only later, after my mother had passed away, that you just figure, I lost all this time. So, and you can't
get it back.
That back, right? So I think, the love piece is just like, I always got to remember, I need to balance myself, my family with work. And the living life piece is, I'm just, with all the things that I've gone through and where I grew up and my parents being away, you have to live life because my mom just left like that. Heart attack is just, you just go, you never know. My father just had a stroke. He was eating in a coffee shop and had a stroke right there. So you just don't know when it's your time. So you just got to live it.
Mm-hmm. Living life to the fullest. One of the things when I lead a little my seminar sometimes, I also people like we get so excited to go on vacation, pack our bags. We're like sometimes we're thinking about it in advance. We're going buying clothes weeks in advance. It's still snowing outside, but you're already planning for some 3 months away because we're so excited for it, right? And
Yeah.
then when we get on that flight, we get there, we're like, oh my gosh, we're here, right? And I tell people like, if you were to live life every day like that, like
Hmm.
every day was the vacation, I could only imagine what your life would look like. We're waiting for this
Yeah.
opportunity. We're waiting to hop on a flight and go to this destination island in maybe the Philippines, right?
You got to go, Paul.
I mean, hey, look, it's on the bucket list now. So it's about this, like you said, I'm really just checking that box and saying that you're right, 100%, living your life to its fullest potential because you never know when that time comes, when our calling is.
Hmm.
You want to make sure you can't take the money with you when you go, right? You can't take the house and the car. So yes. Any last words for our listeners?
Yeah. A couple of things actually. I think sometimes when you don't, you have that imposter syndrome, and you're like, I don't know if I should apply for that job. I don't think I check off all of the boxes. I think you just have to have that trust and confidence, to trust your past experience and trust that, and practice. There's a lot of like online courses that are free that can kind of educate you a little bit to
True.
get you by and just go for it. Trust that you're enough to give it a shot. I think that would be one thing that I would say. And then the other one is this is what I do now that I'm in a different part of my career is just to pay it forward. When you get to a certain level in your career where you're really happy, I mentor the younger generation a lot. And I'm very, very specific. It's not an unconscious bias, it's a conscious bias. So I mentor people from the BIPOC community. I mentor women because, quite frankly, they're the ones that need it the most, especially if they're underprivileged and they come from where I grew up, not where I grew up, but if they
Yeah.
come to similar from the
Yeah.
projects.
Mhm.
um, there's a lot of things that I could help them with. They have the grit, they have the hustle, they have the ability not to take no. Like they have a lot of transferable skills.
Mhm. Mhm.
They just need to know how to transfer it into the corporate environment. So
Gotcha.
I would, say when you get to that level, pay it forward because we
Yeah.
got to bring up the BIPOC community, women in our organization to take us to the next level.
And if you want change, it starts with you.
Yeah,
Right. So if
exactly.
you want change in your company, you want change at your business, you could
In your
always say
community.
the community, you could always say point fingers and say you should do this and you should do this. But if you get to a place in time where you are as a leader, start bringing people in, start helping people, and stuff like that. Because then at that point, it could help change that culture and also help benefit that community. And Michelle, you're doing a phenomenal job with that. So I greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate this conversation, getting to know you, hear your story, your journey. Shout to mom and dad, right? Because the apple does not fall too far from the tree, right?
Ah.
You know what I'm saying? And shout out to the whole Toronto. I know you holding it down out there. But yeah, I think that is one thing I want to leave the listeners with is if you want to hear more stories, inspirational stories like Michelle, please check us out on ZakaConnect.com. Follow our social at Zaka Connect and follow our feed Zaka wherever you listen to your podcasts.